I am here with Herb, who does web blogging. I don't even know necessarily what your intent for the web is, but at geekrev.com, where you talk about churches and web type things. You want to share a little bit about what you're doing over there?
Yeah, Geek Rev, we started it to kind of help smaller churches get a better handle on technology and to not be afraid of it and try to get into doing some of the things that a lot of the bigger churches were doing, but figuring out how to way to do it that scales to a smaller church. And so that's how we kind of started it. And we talk about web stuff, for your website. We talk about live worship stuff. We talk about video stuff, audio stuff, just all kinds of stuff that, in a mindset for smaller churches.
Very cool. And I think for me, the biggest thing that has hit off all of this discussion with you is probably your discussion with server downgrades, and so we're going to talk about that here in a sec. But I got into that with some things that you were saying, and for me, maybe the biggest key from what you bring into the aspect of church technology is that you are speaking into areas that you really know. And I know a lot of people within the church tech industry talk into stuff that they are either currently learning or simply do not know and are being ignorant about what they have to talk about. And you yourself have a lot of different things to share, probably a strong humility side from the sense that I get with you. So you really know what you're talking about, and so I'm kind of excited to hear even some new tools that you haven't necessarily talked too much about.
Okay.
Referencing the slow server, you wrote an article back in November of 2012, and the article is about
It's why your slow server is killing your website and how to fix it.
So I read the article, and I've known a lot about SEO and how to optimize things, but I never thought about a slow server actually hurting your website. So did you want to share a quick snippet about what that website was?
Yeah, we actually had the problem, and on the GeekRev site and some other sites that I deal with, we have a really, really gracious person in our church that has donated server space to a lot of the people in the church for various things they're doing, business websites, blogs, whatever. And so I had a lot of sites running off of that, including the church website. And I just noticed that things, the site itself seemed a little bit slow, but not like, it didn't seem terrible to me, but I have a really fast connection at home, so, I didn't really notice what was going on. And I've never been a real mobile web browser, so I never even thought to look at the church on the website through the mobile browser other than when I was testing it a long time ago to make sure it looked right. So I just noticed a little bit of sluggishness, but then I noticed our traffic on all of the sites that we have connected to that service was just plummeting, and I didn't understand what was going on. And so I checked into a whole bunch of things, and you can read the article, and it talks a little bit about it, but it was really, really messing things up. So there's a tool out there called Pingdom that I've used for a long time that helps you understand how things are loading on your websites, and it's a really cool tool because as you put your URL in there, and as it loads, it shows you line by line as each thing is loading on the page how long it's taking. It'll show you the request moment and the time it took it to respond to the request, and then how long it took it to load it after the request was received and then reported back to you. So you get a good idea of what's going on. You could have access problems, you could have actual disk-based problems on the server and you can kind of figure that stuff out by what you're watching. But usually I try to test sites often, and the last time I had tested, I'd saved the page, and it was loading, under 4 seconds for the whole site. And I thought it was pretty good because given it was a free server, it's not like I can expect 1 and 2 second down, load times, but I figured 3.85 seconds was pretty good. But that day, while I was trying to figure out things, I found it was loading in 15 seconds, over 15 seconds, and I totally didn't expect that. And got to looking at things, and I started following the clues that were listed on the Pingdom page and tried to address each item one by one, but it was still taking forever to load. And so I just decided to go to Google Analytics and try to see if I could kind of correlate anything on there, and it just seemed to me that with a really, really high bounce rate, but I wasn't here. The problem was I wasn't getting any fewer first-time hits, but my bounce rate was really high, and I wasn't getting any additional hits, like secondary hits.
Yeah.
And so it just, I had a hypothesis. Okay, so maybe what's happening is they are hitting the page, and they're seeing something, but it's, you know, it's coming up so long they're not going past that page. That was my assumption, and so I started really looking into that, and I think I was right on that, and so we decided to move to a new server and all of those stats reversed. The bounce rate went way down, and the you know, time on site and the additional pages that people were going, all that stuff went way up. So we realized what was happening, but honestly, I never thought that server speed would have that big of an impact on your site. Oh, and incidentally, I checked the mobile, and it was loading even slower than that when I was trying to pull it up on a mobile phone. So, you know, it's, if people aren't going to be able to get to your site, they're going to get frustrated, and they're just going to go somewhere else. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure that's what was happening. And once we moved to a faster server, I think it bore that out. So.
Well, and the one thing that I drew from that isn't necessarily even the tool to use Pingdom, though it's now bookmarked and I use it probably at least 10 times a month, if not more. But you have been so inclined to keep looking at your web stats, not to obsess about it like probably some new bloggers do, or people that are really trying to monetize their website, but you knew what was normal. And so as you were looking at your website, you didn't see any difference in page views, or at least first-time visitors like you saw, but you knew that it wasn't normal as far as load time. And for somebody that does technology, for somebody that works with any kind of audiovisual equipment, if you understand what is normal, if you really have invested in the actual technology, you can figure that out. And so I think that that's a great takeaway from all of this, is that you have been able to be fluent with how your website works. And so for me, I would have thought, well, maybe it's a writing problem. I'm not writing good enough material to get the people there that they want to stay to read it. And that would have been my first thought, but you were so inclined to the bounce rate and stuff like that to recognize that that is the case. So for me, I think that that was a huge takeaway for all bloggers, for church people that are trying to set up their website. Do you have any more insight into the Google Analytics or other tools that have helped you come to really grasp how your website works?
Well, I think one thing that I think is important to understand is that Google Analytics is awesome, but your stats are going to be different based on what your website is like and what kind of audience you have. I think that a blogging website is going to have totally different metrics than, say, a church website, because you're coming to the things for different reasons. Like for our church website, for instance, we knew that people going to our church website were going there on purpose. They had some avenue that was sending them there, whether it was a Google search or whether it was a business card somewhere or an advertisement. We had a lot of direct traffic hits to the website, and we knew that. And so our bounce rate, of course, is going to be really, really low, because they're coming there on purpose, and they're going to look through things when they get to that. But on some pages, like my blog website, that bounce rate may be really, really high, and I may be getting a lot of other kind of traffic, and I shouldn't be alarmed necessarily if my bounce rate is higher than on another site, because you have to understand what metrics should look like for what kind of site you have. If you have a very vertical site, say for instance you had a blog that was specific about a specific piece of hardware, you should have a really low bounce rate, because the people coming to your website are coming there for that particular piece of equipment generally. They're not coming there just because, you know, some Google search popped you up unrelated. I mean, so you have to understand that what you're reading is, you have to understand it specifically for your type of site. You can't just assume, oh, well, Temp Blogger says that your bounce rate should be at 35 and mine's at 100. That's exaggerating, but you have to understand your site and how those metrics are supposed to work with your site.
And probably it'll get even more confusing, especially for a church website that has been only doing their website for a great place to download forms and look at pictures, and then they add a blog to it, and that just makes it more complex. So I can definitely see what you mean by that, and you really have to dig in and know your site so that you can make those determinations with it.
Right, and there's a couple tools that you should be using when we're talking about at Google Analytics. You need to be using Webmaster Tools.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go to google.com and search Webmaster Tools, and you'll find the first link. And you need to be using the actual analytics website. I mean, a lot of people put that little widget on in their WordPress, and all they look at is a little graph that pops up in their WordPress admin panel. There's a lot more information on the actual Google Analytics website that tells you a whole lot, and you can do a lot of things, like you can assign different tags to different pages or different categories and get total metrics on all those things separately. So it's really, really a strong, powerful tool if you want to use it. So.
Very cool. So one thing I always ask people just at the very end of this is, what is one thing that you are doing online that you would like to share to let people know about that you want to push a little bit?
Well, I would like very much if people would check out some of the stuff we have on geekrev.com. I mean, and if you know of a pastor or youth pastor of a smaller church and they're struggling with the whole technology thing, we're trying to help them have the conversation with their churches on how to get technology into their churches at least expensively, but the most effectively possible. And having said that, I think this would be a good opportunity to put the invite out there for anybody else who has a similar kind of heart, to help smaller churches get a handle of technology. We'd love to have you write with us because I think it's a particular problem. Mm-hmm. It seems like there's a lot more smaller churches out there than there are bigger churches, but it seems like most of the websites, to me, they seem like they cater to churches with larger budgets than most churches I've seen. And so I think we've got a specific audience that needs help. And so if you've got some experience there, we'd love to have you be a part of it.
Geekrev.com. I think that the big push with that is, my glaring endorsement on it is that everybody talks about the hypotheticals of, if you make a budget, you should possibly consider this, or if you are going to do a website, SEO practices that are sort of formulated and sort of a guess. You don't do any of that, at least from my perspective. Everything, I think your tagline is practical ministry technology or something like that.
Right.
And it is practical. That's the thing I love about your website. So if you want to know practical stuff, go check out his website.
I appreciate that.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks for joining us, and everybody check out. What do you guys think as far as technology and web servers? Is it something that you have a process that you kind of like me and you have something you go to, or are you more like Herb and you actually figure out what's going wrong? I'd love to hear you guys' stuff in the comments. We'll talk to you guys next week.